The key didn't fit, not stuck, not jammed, it simply didn't fit. I tried again, slower this time. The metal scraped against something unfamiliar. Wrong shape, wrong lock. That's when I saw the suitcase. Zipped and closed, my name tag still looped through the handle. It stood upright beside the porch swing like it had been placed carefully, not rushed. Fresh screws gleamed against the doorframe. New, tight, measured. "Mom," his voice came from behind me, calm, controlled. I turned. My son stood at the bottom of the steps with his hands in his jacket pockets like he was explaining a minor home repair. "It's for your own good," he said. Of course it was. Everything lately had been. The extra memory questions at the doctor's office. The clipboard angled slightly away from me. The hallway conversation I wasn't included in. "My key doesn't work," I said. He nodded once. "I changed the locks while you were at your appointment." Just like that. In the driveway, his wife sat in the passenger seat with the engine running. She wasn't looking at me. She was typing something on her phone. When he said the evaluation raised concerns, she gave him a quick look, sharp, corrective. "You packed my things?" I asked. "Just essentials," he replied quickly. "Clothes, medication, important paperwork." Paperwork. One orange slipped from the grocery bag and rolled against the porch step. I didn't bend to pick it up. My jaw tightened instead. "We can't keep doing this, Mom," he continued. "If you fall again and the insurance drops you..." I looked up. "I tripped on a rug," I said. "And if the hospital calls at 2 in the morning," he pressed. "If something happens and we didn't act," there it was, not love, risk. Behind him, his wife finally looked at me, not nervous, assessing. "The doctor thinks you shouldn't be alone right now," he added. He didn't say what came next, but I remembered the word printed across the top of a page he'd flipped too quickly. Capacity. I bent and lifted the suitcase. It felt heavier than it should have, or maybe it was the weight of understanding pressing against my ribs. "You could have talked to me," I said. "We tried," he replied. "You keep brushing it off?" I looked past him at the house. 36 years, mortgage paid in full, my husband's ashes beneath the oak tree in the backyard, and now I stood outside like a visitor, so I smiled. Because my son didn't know something. He didn't know about the notarized amendment filed last month. He didn't know the name he thought secured this house had already been quietly replaced. He thought he had locked me out. But as I stood there holding a key that no longer worked, I realized something far more dangerous. He had just changed the lock on a house that wasn't his anymore. The suitcase wheel dragged as I stepped off the porch. A soft scraping sound against the driveway. Neither of them moved to help. His wife shut the car door and came to stand beside him, close enough to signal alignment, not close enough to offer comfort. "We've arranged somewhere temporary," my son said as I reached the bottom step. "Just until everything is sorted." "Sorted how?" I asked. He hesitated. "Until the doctor completes the evaluation. And after that, it depends on how things look." "You mean assisted living?" "It's a transition facility," his wife replied smoothly. "They monitor cognitive changes." "Monitor, not support." I let that settle. "In my house?" I asked. "We'll handle it," he said quickly. "You don't need that stress." I turned back toward the windows. All the curtains were drawn. From the street, it already looked unoccupied. "All right," I said. His shoulders dropped slightly. As I rolled the suitcase toward the car, I noticed something through the windshield, a clipboard on the dashboard. Intake at 3:00 p.m. Today's date? Today, so this wasn't a conversation. It had a time. When I placed the suitcase in the back seat, I saw the folder on the passenger floor. Thick, clipped, my name printed across the tab. His wife noticed my eyes drop. She leaned down quickly, sliding it farther under the seat. But not before I caught the title on the top page, Capacity Review Authorization. My information was already filled in. The signature line left blank for now. "So this was already scheduled?" I said quietly as I slid into the back seat. Neither of them answered. My son adjusted the rearview mirror. "You wouldn't have agreed," he said finally. I nodded once. It wasn't a conversation. It was a decision. We pulled away from the curb. At the end of the block, I looked back. The lawn had been edged in sharp, clean lines. I faced forward again. The call I made last week had already scheduled something else. And the probate litigator waiting on the other end of it didn't scare easily. We weren't heading toward the highway. We were heading east, toward the medical district. Intake 3:00 p.m. flashed briefly on the dashboard screen. 8 minutes away, the car smelled faintly of something new, not my son's usual scent, something floral layered over leather. The radio was off. The road hummed under the tires. We passed the first discreet brick building with trimmed hedges and polished brass signage. I recognized the turn before he made it. Capacity Assessment Center. His wife glanced at her phone. 3:00, she said quietly. I know, he replied. I leaned back into the seat. You could have told me, I said calmly. We tried. No, I corrected gently. You explained. At the next red light, something caught my eye, an envelope on the center console. Cream paper, thick stock, addressed in my son's handwriting to Hastings and Cole. The light hadn't turned green yet. His wife noticed my gaze. Her fingers moved first, too fast. She slid the envelope halfway toward her side. He glanced at her, a look passed between them. Quick, corrective. She finished the motion and tucked it into her purse. Just organizing things, she said. I nodded once. You fell, he said suddenly. You didn't tell us. I bruised my hip in the garden. You forgot. I didn't forget. If you fall again, he continued carefully, eyes on the road, and the hospital calls at 2 in the morning if the insurance refuses coverage. If someone says we ignored warning signs, there it was, exposure, liability. They weren't reacting to an accident. They were documenting a pattern. And if this evaluation says I'm fine, I asked. It's precaution, his wife replied. Standard procedure? We turned into the parking lot. Low brick building, clean windows, professional discretion. Admission doors slid open automatically. My son parked close to the entrance. Mom, he said, softer now, we're doing this because we love you. I reached for the door handle, then paused. You know, I said mildly, if you'd asked me to review the trust with you, we could have discussed it. Silence. What trust? His wife asked. He blinked. You amended it, he said slowly. I let the quiet stretch between us. Yes. His grip tightened on the steering wheel. I stepped out of the car. Cool air met my face. After the bank called me, I added. His wife came around quickly. Let's focus on today, she said. Inside, the lobby smelled faintly of disinfectant and citrus. Neutral chairs, neutral art, neutral receptionist. Identification, please. I handed it over. Clipboard, forms. I signed my name slowly, evenly. No tremor. My son watched my hand, waiting for proof. He didn't get it, and he didn't know something else. The notarized amendment I filed last month triggered an automatic review. Any guardianship petition tied to my name would now be flagged. Automatically, I handed the clipboard back. I'm ready, I said. And as the receptionist stood to call my name, I realized something. Some assessments cut both ways. The door closed behind me before my son could follow. Just routine, the receptionist said with a practiced smile. It helps ensure objectivity. Dr. Ellison met me halfway down the hallway. Neutral expression, neutral tone. The evaluation room was beige. Beige walls, beige carpet, beige chair. The kind of room designed to make strong opinions feel unreasonable. Please have a seat, he said. I did. He opened a thin file. Do you know why you're here today? Yes, I answered evenly. My son requested a capacity evaluation. His pen paused for half a second before continuing. And how do you feel about that? I think the timing is interesting. He didn't respond to that. We started with the basics. Date. Address, president, then memory recall, apple, chair, penny. I repeated them back. He moved into recent events. The fall, he said. Yes. You didn't report it. It was a bruise. Why not tell your son? Because bruises don't require oversight. His pen slowed, but he didn't correct me. Have you made any recent financial changes? Yes. What kind? Estate planning adjustments. Significant, protective. He wrote something down, but not the word I'd used. Do you feel pressured by your son? No. Do you believe he has your best interests in mind? Yes. Both were true. Intent and control aren't the same thing. He leaned back slightly. Your son expressed concern about delayed payments. I auto-schedule through my bank, he nodded. And the access inquiry, he asked. That one he isolated. Yes, I said calmly. You were aware of it? Yes. Did you authorize it? No, he stopped writing. Explain. The bank contacted me regarding a consolidation request. I didn't make it. A pause. And what did you do next? I amended my trust. Now he looked at me directly. Why? Because when someone tries to simplify your independence without asking, it usually isn't simplification. He held my gaze longer this time. We moved through pattern recognition, problem solving, verbal fluency. He asked me to draw a clock. I drew it. Centered, balanced, correct time. He closed the file. Do you feel safe living alone? Yes. Do you feel cognitively impaired? No. Do you believe anyone is attempting to influence your autonomy? I folded my hands in my lap. I believe, I said carefully, that sometimes love becomes confused with management. He wrote that down. When we stepped back into the hallway, my son was pacing. His wife sat upright, fingers laced too tightly together. They stood at the same time. Well, my son asked. Dr. Ellison remained composed. We're not finished, he said. I'd like to speak with you as well. With me, my son asked. Yes, his wife stood. I'll join him. Dr. Ellison's expression didn't shift. I'd prefer to speak to each of you individually. My son's jaw tightened. His wife's fingers unclasped, then quickly relaced. Small tells, but visible. Dr. Ellison gestured toward the hallway. If you'll follow me. My son hesitated for just a second before stepping forward. For the first time that afternoon, the questions weren't mine alone. They took my son first. The hallway swallowed him whole, and the door shut with a quiet click that felt deliberate. His wife remained across from me in the waiting area, back straight, hands folded over her purse. She checked the time on her phone, then again. Her heel tapped once against the tile before going still. We didn't speak. The receptionist typed steadily. A printer whirred somewhere behind a wall. The air felt too even, too controlled. When the hallway door opened, my son stepped out looking different. Not defeated, not victorious, just recalculating. He glanced at his wife before he looked at me. Well, she asked softly. He gave the smallest shake of his head. Dr. Ellison appeared behind him. Mrs. Whittaker, he said to my daughter-in-law, I'll need to speak with you next. Her fingers tightened slightly before she stood. Of course. She disappeared down the hallway. Now it was just my son and me. What did you say in there? He asked. The truth? That's not what I mean. I know. He leaned forward, lowering his voice. You didn't have to mention the bank. I didn't have to come home to a new lock either. His jaw flexed. That was temporary. So was the intake appointment. His eyes flickered. They showed you paperwork. You left it visible. A breath passed through his nose. I'm trying to protect you. From what? From yourself. He didn't hold my gaze. I can't keep doing this, he said more quietly. I can't keep waiting for something to happen. I already spoke to an attorney just to understand options. If you fall again, if insurance refuses coverage, if something goes wrong, it lands on us. Options, I repeated. You didn't ask to manage my life, I said calmly. You assumed. Before he could respond, the hallway door opened again. His wife stepped out first. Her composure was thinner now. Dr. Ellison followed, the file closed in his hands. He paused before speaking, long enough for the air to tighten. I've completed the preliminary assessment, he said evenly. My son stood. And, Dr. Ellison met his eyes. I have no immediate cognitive concerns regarding your mother's capacity. No one moved. The air conditioner clicked on overhead. My son's fingers tightened at his sides. She demonstrates intact executive functioning, memory retention, and financial awareness. So there's no issue? My son asked. There is no current basis for guardianship intervention. Silence stretched across the hallway. His wife inhaled sharply. But we already initiated paperwork, my son said. Dr. Ellison held his gaze without blinking. Then I would advise you to review it carefully. A pause. Filing without basis can have consequences. That word didn't need emphasis. It settled on its own. My son looked at the floor. His wife's grip tightened around her purse strap. I stood. "Thank you for your time," I said. Outside, sunlight spilled across the parking lot. My son unlocked the car but didn't immediately open the door. "Mom," he began, voice thinner now, "we can still make arrangements. This doesn't have to turn into something. It already did. But the house is still mine." He didn't argue. They had changed the locks and initiated paperwork, which meant if this continued, the word would change. And once it changes, it doesn't go back. As we got into the car, his wife pulled out her phone. "I'll need to call Mark," she said quietly. They dropped me at the corner, not in the driveway. "We'll fix the lock tomorrow," my son said. "Of course," I replied. They didn't walk me up. The porch light was still on, though it was barely 3 in the afternoon. My suitcase waited exactly where I'd left it. The new deadbolt caught the light. I didn't try the door. Instead, I walked down the driveway toward the garage. The side entrance stuck the way it always had in humid weather. I leaned into it. It opened. Inside, everything was untouched. Workbench, extension cords, paint cans, and the small lockbox mounted behind the shelving. I punched in the code. Took the spare key. The front door opened easily. The new deadbolt hadn't replaced the old lock. It had only layered over it. An addition, not a replacement. Inside, the house felt adjusted. Cushions squared, male aligned. Photos angled differently than I kept them. Nothing missing, just handled. In the kitchen, my calendar still hung beside the refrigerator. 3 o'clock circled in red, capacity assessment center. Tomorrow's square was blank. I called Mark. He answered on the second ring. "Yes, it's done. And no cognitive concerns." A pause. "Did they initiate paperwork?" "Yes. Keep any documentation, photographs." Messages. "I was locked out." "Good you documented it. That was all." "You amended the trust in time," he added. "And if they try again, they'll have to justify it." He didn't elaborate. I walked down the hallway toward my bedroom. The closet door was slightly open. A box sat on the dresser. Not mine. Inside were 3 assisted living brochures, highlighted, tabbed. One page marked immediate intake availability. I took photographs, sent them. His reply came seconds later. "Keep those." Across the street, Mrs. Howard's curtain shifted slightly. I stepped back into the living room and examined the new deadbolt more closely. The screws were over-tightened, uneven, installed quickly, confidently, not professionally. Outside, a car turned the corner, familiar headlights. They didn't pull into the driveway, they parked across the street, engine running. My daughter-in-law was on her phone. My son stared at the house, not the porch, the upstairs windows. The porch light was still on. The front door was unlocked. I didn't open it. I waited. They didn't stay long, 5 minutes, maybe less. The engine across the street finally shut off. My daughter-in-law stepped out first. My son followed. They crossed the road together, not rushed, not hesitant, deliberate. I stayed inside. The front door was unlocked, the porch light still on. They rang the bell once, twice. I didn't move immediately, let the silence stretch. On the third ring, I opened the door. My son's eyes scanned me quickly, face, posture, hands, as if checking for something specific. "You got in," he said. "Yes, you shouldn't have used the garage." "It's my garage." His jaw tightened. "We were coming back to talk." "About what?" My daughter-in-law stepped forward slightly. "We were concerned you might try something impulsive after today." "Impulsive," I repeated. "Changing the locks wasn't impulsive," she added evenly. "It was preventative. And parking across the street?" My son ignored that. "Mom, we need to make sure you're safe." "I am," he hesitated then. "We called for a wellness check." The word landed quietly. Wellness, that word again. "When?" I asked. "About 10 minutes ago." Almost on cue, red and blue lights flickered at the end of the block, subtle at first, then brighter. Mrs. Howard's curtain moved again, this time more dramatically. The patrol car rolled slowly down the street and stopped in front of my house. One officer stepped out. Calm, neutral, used to this. "Evening," he said, walking up the driveway. "We received a call requesting a welfare check." my son spoke first. "We were concerned about her cognitive state after a fall last week. We just wanted to make sure she's okay." The officer nodded and looked at me. "Ma'am, I'm fine," I said evenly. "Mind if I ask you a couple questions?" "Not at all." He stepped onto the porch. My son and his wife stayed slightly behind him now. Interesting shift. "What's today's date?" the officer asked. I answered. "Who's the current president?" I answered. "Do you know where you are right now?" "Yes." He glanced back at my son. "She seems oriented. She can present well," my daughter-in-law said quickly. "That's part of what worries us." "Present well?" The officer's expression didn't change. "Ma'am," he asked, "do you feel safe in this residence?" "Yes." "Are you being forced to remain here against your will?" "No." My son's shoulders were tight now. The officer looked between us. "Do you have access to your phone, transportation, funds?" "Yes." "All of them?" "Yes." The officer nodded slowly. "Then at this time, I don't see cause for intervention." My son exhaled through his nose. "But we changed the locks earlier because she's not thinking clearly." "You changed the locks?" the officer asked. My son froze for half a second. "We were trying to help." The officer looked at me again. "Ma'am, were you denied access to your home today?" "Yes." That hung in the air. The officer shifted his stance. "Sir," he said to my son, voice still calm, "denying access to someone's property without legal authority can create issues." "We were concerned." "I understand concern," the officer replied. "Concern doesn't override property rights." My daughter-in-law crossed her arms. "We were advised to monitor her." "By who?" the officer asked. Silence. "Medical evaluation," my son said finally. "Was there a guardianship order issued?" "No." "Then she maintains legal autonomy." The officer turned back to me. "If you feel pressured or unsafe at any point, you can contact us directly." "I understand." He nodded once more and stepped back. The patrol car lights shut off. The street returned to normal, except it wasn't. My son didn't look at me immediately. He stared at the driveway, then at the porch light, then at the officer as he drove away. "That wasn't necessary," he muttered. "You called them," I replied. "We're trying to prevent something worse." "Worse than what?" He didn't answer. My daughter-in-law stepped forward. "You're making this harder than it needs to be." "By answering questions?" I asked. Her eyes narrowed slightly. "This doesn't end here." There it was, not emotional, strategic. "I didn't think it would," I said. My son stepped closer to me now, lowered his voice. "Mark won't be able to protect you forever." Interesting. So Mark's name had entered their conversations too. "I'm not asking to be protected," I said calmly. I stepped back inside. They didn't follow. They stood on the porch for a moment longer, then walked back across the street. The engine started again, but this time they didn't leave. They stayed parked there, watching. 10 minutes passed, then 20. Finally, the car pulled away. The porch light was still on. The house was quiet. But something had shifted, not legally, publicly. Neighbors had seen the patrol car. He had escalated first. That matters. I walked into the kitchen and checked my phone. One new message from Mark. "They called the police?" Yes, 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. "Good," he wrote that word again. Outside, 2 houses down, Mrs. Howard stepped onto her porch. Looking, waiting. The street had been quiet for 20 years. Now it was awake. And once a neighborhood starts paying attention, it doesn't stop easily. The next morning, my phone rang at 8:12 a.m. Not my son, not Mark, Mrs. Howard. I let it ring twice before answering. "Good morning," I said evenly. "Oh dear," she began, her voice layered with concern and curiosity in equal measure. "We saw the police car last night." "Is everything all right?" Concern. That word travels fast in neighborhoods like this. "Yes," I said, "everything is fine." There was a pause. "Well, your son seemed very worried." I pictured the scene from her porch, him speaking urgently. Her nodding sympathetically, the patrol car lights reflecting in her front window. "I'm sure he did," I replied. Another pause. "You know how people talk," she added carefully. "Yes, I did. By noon, I had 2 more calls. One from the church directory list. One from a neighbor 3 houses down. The story had already shifted. Not she was locked out, but her son is trying to help. Concern reframes everything. At 1:17 p.m., my son texted, "We need to clarify things with the neighbors. This is getting misunderstood." Clarify, I didn't respond. At 2:04 p.m., I received something else. A certified letter notification. Delivery attempted. Sender. Silver Oaks Transitional Care. Interesting, I hadn't been admitted, yet paperwork had already moved. I drove to the post office myself. No hesitation, no announcement. The clerk handed me the envelope. Intake packet. Preliminary placement reservation. Tentative move-in window, 72 hours. Authorized by Daniel H., my son, not finalized, but initiated. There it was, not just concern, coordination. I sat in my car and read it twice, then took a photograph of every page and sent them to Mark. He called immediately. "They're accelerating," he said. "Yes." "Good," that word again. "Why good?" I asked. "Because escalation narrows options." I leaned back in the driver's seat. "They reserved a bed. Reservation isn't admission. They're preparing. So are we." His tone remained level. "Public narrative is forming," he continued. "That's predictable. They've started calling neighbors. Let them." That surprised me. "Perception matters," he said, "but documentation matters more." Outside, 2 elderly women walked past my car. They glanced in, recognized me. One smiled, polite. The other didn't. Narrative spread quietly. "They're positioning this as protective intervention," Mark continued, "which means they'll likely escalate through a softer channel next." Softer, financial. That word tightened something in my chest. They may attempt account monitoring again, or flag unusual spending, or contact the bank. They already tried consolidation? Yes, but they failed publicly. Silence. "What do I do?" I asked. "Nothing impulsive." "I haven't been impulsive." "I know." A pause. "Go home, act normally, don't isolate, don't confront, let them think momentum is theirs. And if they move again, they will." He didn't hesitate. "Then we respond." I drove home slowly. The house looked the same, but the curtains across the street were open now, wide, watching openly. When I stepped onto my porch, I saw it. A flyer taped to my mailbox. Community safety notice. Concerned residents are encouraged to report signs of cognitive decline in vulnerable neighbors. Anonymous reporting available. Subtle, strategic. I peeled it off carefully, not crumpling it, not tearing it. Evidence. Inside, the house was quiet. I walked through each room deliberately. Bedroom, kitchen, office, everything intact, but something else was different. The landline message light was blinking. 3 voicemails. First, my son. "Mom, please don't overreact. This is for stability." Second, unknown number. "Hi, this is Silver Oaks confirming intake coordination." Third, my daughter-in-law. "We're trying to prevent a crisis." Crisis. Interesting choice. I didn't return the calls. Instead, I opened my laptop. Logged into my banking portal. Everything appeared normal, but I checked deeper. Alerts. Activity logs. Recent access attempts. There it was. Account inquiry from Daniel H. yesterday. Twice. He was already testing the perimeter. I took screenshots, forwarded them to Mark. His reply came quickly. "Do not confront." 3 words, precise. I closed the laptop, sat at the kitchen table. The house was quiet again. But the quiet wasn't neutral anymore. It was observed. At 6:43 p.m., headlights slowed in front of the house. Not stopping, just slowing. My son's car, he didn't park, just drove past, slow enough to see inside. Then continued down the block, testing presence. I didn't turn off the lights. I didn't draw the curtains. I made tea, sat at the table where he used to do homework, and waited, because escalation doesn't always come loud. Sometimes it arrives disguised as help, and this one wasn't finished. The freeze didn't come loudly. It came quietly, like everything else. 2 days after the flyer appeared on my mailbox, I drove to the grocery store. Nothing dramatic. Milk. Spinach, tea, normal purchases, normal life. I inserted my card, waited, declined. I looked at the cashier. "I'm sorry," she said politely. "It says authorization required." Authorization. That word again, I tried again, declined. The line behind me shifted impatiently. Heat rose slowly up my neck, not panic, just awareness. I stepped aside, used a different card, approved. I didn't argue, didn't ask questions, didn't perform embarrassment. I finished my shopping, drove home, sat in the driveway before going inside. Then I opened my banking app again. This time the notification was clear. Temporary security review initiated due to third-party concern. Third-party concern, not fraud, not error, concern. Under activity log, external welfare inquiry filed, authorized representative request pending. Daniel H. He hadn't gained access, but he'd triggered review. I took screenshots. Forwarded them to Mark. He called within minutes. They've escalated through the bank. Yes, expected. I thought you said financial would be softer. It is softer optics, harder leverage. I stared at the steering wheel. They're creating a record, yes, of instability, of concern, the word again. And what does that do? If enough concern accumulates, institutions lean cautious. Cautious, meaning restrictive. They're building perception across systems, he continued. Medical, neighborhood, financial, a coordinated narrative. My son wasn't acting emotionally anymore, he was acting procedurally. Will this hold? I asked. The freeze is temporary, and after, if they push further, it becomes obstruction. He didn't elaborate, he never did. I went inside. The house felt slightly different again, not disturbed, but heavier. The landline blinked once, I ignored it. Instead, I checked my mail, a letter from my insurance provider. Routine coverage review requested following recent capacity inquiry. Capacity inquiry, it was spreading. I sat at the kitchen table again. Spread the documents out neatly. Evaluation result, bank freeze notice, insurance letter, Silver Oaks intake confirmation. Pieces, aligned. Outside, a car door slammed. I looked through the window, not my son. A woman I didn't recognize stood on the sidewalk. Clipboard, professional smile. She walked up my driveway, knocked. I opened the door. Mrs. Hastings, she asked. Yes. My name is Laura Chen. I'm conducting a community wellness follow-up. Community wellness, another channel. Based on a report, she continued carefully, we're just verifying that you're safe and have access to necessities. Report. Who filed it? I asked. I'm not authorized to disclose that. Of course not. May I come in for a brief check? I held her gaze. Are you mandated to enter? No, then no. She didn't argue, just checked a box on her clipboard. That's fine, she said evenly. I'll note that you declined. Declined. Another word for the record. Have a good afternoon. She walked back down the driveway. The car across the street slowed again, not stopping, just observing. I closed the door gently, not slamming, not rushing. This was no longer about forcing me out. It was about documenting resistance. Resistance can be reframed, noncompliance. Isolation, paranoia, the narrative was widening. At 5:32 p.m., my son texted again. We heard someone stopped by. Please don't refuse assistance. It makes things harder. Harder for who? I typed. He didn't respond. Instead, another email arrived from the bank. Security review extended pending additional clarification. Extended, I exhaled slowly. Not fear, calculation. They were applying pressure without confrontation. A slow squeeze, institution by institution. Concern, capacity, wellness. Authorization, each word neutral alone, dangerous together. I called Mark. They're layering, I said. Yes. Bank, insurance, community. Yes. Do they know about the amendment? No. Good. That word again. Let them continue, he said. That seems risky. It is. Silence stretched. But premature action weakens response. So we wait. Yes. And if the bank freezes longer, it becomes evidence. Evidence, he hung up first. Outside, dusk settled slowly. The porch light turned on automatically. I hadn't touched it. Across the street, my son's car parked this time. Engine off. He sat inside, lights out, watching, not angry, not shouting, waiting for collapse. I turned off the kitchen lights, left the living room lamp on, let him see movement. Let him see I wasn't unraveling because escalation had changed shape. It wasn't force anymore, it was containment. And containment, when done incorrectly, can look like something else entirely. The second freeze came without warning. This time, it wasn't the grocery store. It was the pharmacy. I stood at the counter holding my prescription. Blood pressure medication, nothing dramatic. Routine. The pharmacist smiled politely as he ran my card. Declined. He tried again. Same result. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Hastings. It says account restricted." Restricted. That word carried weight. "I'll pay cash," I said calmly. He nodded. I paid. Left with the small white bag in my hand, sat in my car, and didn't start the engine. Restricted, not frozen. Restricted, more severe. I opened the banking app again. This time the notice was different. Temporary protective hold escalated to review status. Review status. Under activity log, authorized representative inquiry updated. Medical capacity flag referenced. They'd linked it. The evaluation. The bank medical capacity flag. He had forwarded something, or someone had. My pulse stayed steady, but my jaw tightened once before I realized it. I took screenshots, forwarded everything to Mark. He didn't call immediately this time. He texted, "Did you pay cash?" "Yes." "Good." 10 minutes later, he called. "They pushed documentation," he said. "They're using the evaluation. They're referencing the inquiry, not the outcome." Important distinction. They can't freeze accounts without cause. They're not freezing, they're reviewing. Language again, neutral words, heavy consequences. "Is it legal?" I asked. Gray, helpful? "Let them continue." Again, that instruction. "Why?" I asked. "Because pressure creates mistakes." Silence. "You amended the trust," he continued, "but we haven't triggered enforcement." "You're waiting." "Yes, for what?" "For them to cross from concern into interference." "Have they?" Almost. I drove home. The mailbox held something new, handwritten envelope. No return address. Inside, a note. "Daniel is only trying to keep you safe. Please cooperate before this gets worse." No signature. But I recognized the handwriting. My daughter-in-law, subtle intimidation disguised as civility. I photographed it. Sent it. Mark replied instantly, "Keep everything." Inside, the house felt unchanged, but I noticed something new. The thermostat had been adjusted. Lower, 3 degrees. I hadn't touched it. I checked the side door, locked, windows intact. Someone had been inside or still had access. I walked to the hallway closet. The small safe where I kept original documents. Still locked, untouched. I checked the garage, everything in place. Then I remembered the smart system. My son had helped install it last year, access shared through family accounts. I opened the control panel, recent logins, remote adjustment, 2:11 p.m. Daniel H. He hadn't broken in. He still had digital access. Control didn't always require keys. I stood in the hallway, very still. The house wasn't breached. It was monitored. I called Mark again. "He still has system access," I said. "Remove it." "I will." "Document first." I took photos of the login history, then revoked his access. Immediately, the app notified. "User removed." 30 seconds later, my phone buzzed. "Daniel, why did you remove my access?" I didn't respond. Another text. "Mom, that's not helpful." Helpful. I sat at the kitchen table. The light outside flickered on automatically. Then off, then on again. Testing. Another text. "We can't help you if you shut us out." Help, the word had lost meaning. Then the call came, not from my son, from the bank. "Mrs. Hastings, we've received additional concern regarding financial vulnerability. We need to schedule a verification meeting." "In person?" I asked. "Yes." "When?" "Tomorrow at 11 a.m. Convenient, very convenient." I ended the call, texted Mark. "Meeting scheduled." His reply, "Good." He always said that. "Bring everything?" I looked around my kitchen, the documents laid out neatly. Evaluation clearance, bank restriction notice, insurance review letter, Silver Oaks intake packet, handwritten note, smart system logs, a pattern. They were attempting convergence. Medical, financial, community, digital. It wasn't random, it was coordinated. At 9:18 p.m., my son knocked on the door, not hard, 3 even taps. I didn't rush, opened it slowly. He looked tired more than before. "This is spiraling," he said. "For who?" I asked. "For everyone." "Then stop." "You removed access." "Yes, you're making this adversarial." I held his gaze. "You made it procedural." He inhaled sharply. "This could get formal." "Define formal." He hesitated. That was new. "Court involvement," he said finally. There it was, not concern, not review, court. "You'd file?" I asked. "If we have to." He wasn't alone in this. On what basis? Vulnerability. He didn't sound cert. "Careful," I said quietly. "With what?" "Definitions change." He stared at me for a long moment, then looked past me into the house. "Still intact, still mine." "You don't understand how bad this looks," he said. "I understand exactly how it looks." He stepped back. The porch light cast shadows across his face. "This doesn't have to be a fight." "It already is." He didn't argue, just walked down the driveway, got into his car, sat there. Engine running, not leaving, waiting. Inside, I returned to the kitchen table, placed everything neatly into a folder. Tomorrow would not be reactive, it would be structural. Because if he moved this into court, the word would change again. And once it does, it doesn't go back. The bank lobby smelled like polished marble in quiet judgment. 11 o'clock, on time. I didn't rush inside, I walked. Steady. The glass doors opened automatically. Inside, the air felt cooler than outside. Controlled, regulated, just like everything else lately. "Mrs. Hastings?" A woman in a navy blazer asked from behind the front desk. "Yes, thank you for coming. Please follow me?" Her smile was practiced, not unfriendly, not warm, neutral, that word again. She led me to a private office near the back, door closed, blinds half drawn, a folder already sitting on the desk, prepared. Across from her sat a younger man in a gray suit. He didn't introduce himself at first. He watched, observing baseline behavior. "Mrs. Hastings," the woman began gently, "we've received multiple notifications expressing concern about your financial decision-making capacity." Multiple. "Not one. From whom?" I asked calmly. "I'm not authorized to disclose the source." "Of course not." She folded her hands on the desk. "This is simply a protective verification meeting. Routine. Routine. We need to confirm that you are independently managing your accounts." "I am." The younger man spoke for the first time. "Have you experienced any recent confusion regarding your financial obligations?" "No." "Any missed payments?" "No." "Any new advisors assisting you?" "Yes." That caught their attention. The man's pen paused. "Name?" "Mark Ellison." A slight shift in posture, they knew the name. "Is Mr. Ellison your financial advisor?" the woman asked carefully. "No." "What is his role?" "Legal counsel." Silence. The air conditioner clicked overhead. "You retained legal counsel recently?" the man asked. "Yes." "For what purpose?" I held his gaze. "To protect my autonomy." The word landed cleanly. The woman exchanged a glance with him, subtle. Measured. "You understand," she continued, "that when multiple parties express concern, we're obligated to assess risk." "Multiple parties," I repeated. "Yes." "How many?" She hesitated. "More than one." Coordinated. I reached into my bag, placed documents neatly on the desk. Evaluation clearance from Dr. Ellison, Smart System Access Log, Account Inquiry Attempts, Silver Oaks Intake Packet, the handwritten note. The man in the gray suit leaned forward slightly. Reading, processing, the woman's professional calm thinned. "These materials suggest," she began. "They suggest premeditation," I finished quietly. Silence again, longer this time. The younger man flipped through the pages more carefully. "You were locked out of your residence?" he asked. "Yes." "By whom?" "My son." No embellishment, no anger, just fact. "And he is the same individual who initiated the representative inquiry?" "Yes." Another silence, not neutral now, waited. "You amended your trust recently," he said without looking up. "Yes." "How did you know that?" I asked. He looked up then, routine background cross-reference. "Interesting. So the bank has access to my trust filing?" Public amendment filings are visible. He wasn't wrong, but he was confirming something else. They had already reviewed it, which meant Mark had anticipated this. The woman straightened slightly. Mrs. Hastings, based on what you've provided, we may need to adjust the status of this review. Adjust, I waited. We'll temporarily suspend the restriction while we conduct internal review. Suspend, not remove, but suspend was enough. And the external representative request, I asked, pending but not approved. Good. The younger man closed the folder. There's something else, he said carefully. What? He turned one page toward me, printed email. From Daniel H. Subject, urgent financial risk concern, time-stamped 3 days ago. He had submitted a formal narrative. It detailed impulsive spending, withdrawal irregularities, cognitive inconsistency, all fabricated but documented. I read it without reacting. He's attempting protective oversight, the woman said cautiously. He's attempting control, I replied. Another silence. Measured, professional. The man in gray adjusted his tie slightly. Mrs. Hastings, if a formal guardianship petition is filed, we would be legally obligated to freeze assets pending court review. There it was again. Court, if, yes. Has one been filed? No, not yet. But given the trajectory, he added, it would not surprise us. Trajectory, they saw it too. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It was an escalation path. I gathered my documents slowly, neatly. If one is filed, I said calmly, you'll be contacted directly by my counsel. The woman nodded. That would be appropriate. Appropriate. I stood. Neither of them rushed to end the meeting, but neither attempted to prolong it either. The dynamic had shifted again. When I stepped back into the lobby, the air felt warmer, not safe, but stable. Outside, sunlight reflected off windshields. Normal life continued. I checked my phone, 2 missed calls from Daniel. One voicemail, I didn't listen to it. Instead, I texted Mark. Bank aware, petition likely. His reply came quickly. Good, that word again. Now we're in documented territory, different terrain, different rules. Across the street from the bank parking lot, I saw it. My son's car, engine off. Watching, he wasn't surprised. He wasn't frantic. He was waiting, measuring. When I pulled out of the lot, he didn't follow immediately. He waited 10 seconds, then merged behind me, not close, not distant, just enough. He wasn't trying to scare me. He was positioning, which meant something else had already been set in motion. Because people don't shadow quietly unless they're confident in their next move. And if the petition wasn't filed yet, it was being prepared. It happened faster than I expected. 2 days, that's all it took. I was watering the front garden when the process server walked up the driveway. Not rushed, not apologetic, just procedural. Mrs. Hastings? Yes. He handed me a sealed envelope. You've been served. No drama. No raised voice, just ink and paper and consequence. I didn't open it immediately. I finished watering the roses first. Routine matters. Inside, at the kitchen table, I broke the seal, petition for emergency guardianship. Filed by Daniel Hastings. Grounds cited financial instability, cognitive decline, risk of asset dissipation. Emergency, that word again. He hadn't waited. He hadn't recalculated. He had escalated. I scanned the filing carefully. Attached. His email to the bank. A summarized incident report about the smart system. A written statement claiming I had been isolating from family. Isolating. Interesting choice. There was also a sworn affidavit. Signed, dated yesterday. He had gone to court. He had stood before someone. He had said these things aloud. And somewhere in a clerk's office, my name was now attached to the word emergency. I set the papers down, calm, steady. This wasn't panic, it was confirmation. I texted Mark. Filed emergency, he called within seconds. Did they grant temporary control? Not yet. Good. That means the judge wants review? There was a pause on his end, measured. They've requested an expedited hearing, 48 hours. 48 fast. Do we have enough? I asked. Yes. No hesitation. But understand something, he added. Emergency filings are designed to create pressure. Judges don't like overreach. Is this overreach? Yes. Clear, certain. What's his argument? Mark asked. Financial instability, cognitive decline. Isolation, a soft exhale. Isolation won't hold. You have documented social interaction. Evaluation clearance stands. Financial records are stable. And the locks? That's leverage, he said quietly. Leverage, not comfort. Not protection, evidence. What about the bank inquiry? I asked. It shows intent to assume control prior to court approval. Intent, that word again. You'll need to appear composed, Mark said. I know. But the court needs to see it. He wasn't wrong. Guardianship hearings aren't about truth. They're about perception. I hung up, looked around my kitchen, my house, my light, my clock ticking steadily on the wall, 48 hours. That evening, Daniel knocked on the door, not aggressively, not softly. I opened it. He stood there alone, no wife, no car running, just him. I didn't want you to find out like that, he said. You filed emergency guardianship. I had to. Why emergency? Because you're not listening. You changed the locks, I said. You amended the trust. And you responded by asking the court to remove my rights. His jaw tightened. This isn't about rights, it's about protection. From what? You're being influenced. There it was, the new angle. By whom? That lawyer, Mark. He said the name carefully, like it tasted unpleasant. You think legal counsel equals influence? I asked. I think he benefits if this becomes complicated. Interesting. So now the narrative was shifting from cognitive concern to external manipulation. You're escalating, I said quietly. No, I'm stabilizing. His voice rose slightly on that word, just slightly, enough to show strain. Daniel, I said gently, do you understand what happens if the court sees overreach? He didn't answer. They don't just deny it, I continued. They review motive. Silence. You think this is about money? He asked sharply. I think courts look at patterns. His breath shifted. Faster. He hadn't anticipated pushback at this level. You're making this bigger than it is, he said. No, I replied calmly. You did. We stood there in the doorway, two versions of protection, two definitions of control. I'm trying to keep this from becoming public, he said finally. Public. There it was, image, reputation, neighbors, church, community. You filed emergency guardianship, I said. That's already public record. His eyes flickered. He hadn't considered that, or he had, and hoped I wouldn't. Withdraw it, I said quietly. I can't. Not won't, can't, which meant someone had advised him to proceed, or someone had convinced him it was necessary, or someone stood to gain. 48 hours, I said. After that, it won't be your decision anymore. He stepped back slightly, measured the house, measured me. You think you're winning, he said. This isn't winning. It feels like you're choosing him over me. Ah, there it was, not control. Not protection, possession. I'm choosing autonomy, I said. That's not the same thing. He didn't respond, he just nodded once. Tight, controlled, then turned and walked down the driveway. No engine waiting, no curtain shifting. Just fading light. Inside, I sat at the kitchen table again. 48 hours. Emergency petitions are meant to frighten, to destabilize, to force compliance before the hearing even happens. But something about the filing told me something else. The affidavit had been structured carefully, too carefully. Someone had helped him draft it. And if someone had helped him, then someone believed it could succeed. Which meant the hearing wouldn't be procedural, it would be strategic. And if they were preparing arguments, so was I. The courthouse was colder than I remembered, not temperature, tone. Emergency hearings are not theatrical, they're fast. Contained, clinical. Daniel stood on the opposite side of the hallway, speaking quietly with his wife and a man I didn't recognize. Mid-50s, gray suit, sharp posture. That would be the one who helped draft the affidavit. He glanced at me once, assessed, then looked away. Mark arrived 5 minutes later, no rush, no briefcase theatrics, just a folder and a calm expression. They hired Thomas Kellerman, he said quietly. Is that significant? He specializes in contested capacity petitions. Of course he did. Confident? I asked. Yes, not reassurance, assessment. We entered the courtroom, small, no jury, just a judge, a clerk, and paper. Daniel avoided my eyes, his wife didn't. She watched me steadily like she was still trying to decide something. The judge reviewed the petition silently for several moments, then looked up. Emergency guardianship requires immediate and demonstrable harm risk, she said evenly. Her eyes moved to Daniel. Counsel? Kellerman stood, smooth voice, measured tone. He spoke about financial exposure, about vulnerability, about patterns of impulsive decision-making, about outside influence. Outside influence again. He framed it carefully, not incapacity. Concern, protection, temporary oversight, strategic words. He submitted the lock incident. The trust amendment, bank inquiry correspondence, facility brochures. That last one caught the judge's attention. Those were located in the petitioner's possession, she asked. Daniel hesitated. Yes, in the respondent's bedroom, Mark added calmly. Silence shifted. Kellerman recovered smoothly. Exploratory planning, he said, for her benefit. The judge's pen paused. Without her knowledge, a beat. Yes, that one word cost them more than they realized. Mark stood, no theatrics, no raised voice. He began with the evaluation clearance. Submitted Dr. Ellison's assessment, documented, professional, recent, then the photographs. The new deadbolt, time-stamped, the brochure box, highlighted pages, the emergency filing date 48 hours after the failed evaluation. He didn't attack, he layered, intent, sequence, pattern. Your Honor, he said evenly, this filing appears reactionary to the respondent's lawful estate amendment. The judge looked directly at Daniel. Mr. Hastings, did you consult counsel before changing the locks? Daniel's voice was steady. Yes. Did you have legal authority at that time? No. Did you inform your mother you intended to seek guardianship? No. Did you present medical documentation suggesting incapacity? Kellerman answered that one. Not formal documentation, Your Honor. The judge leaned back slightly, measured, then looked at me. Mrs. Hastings, do you feel unsafe? No. Do you feel financially compromised? No. Do you understand the nature of these proceedings? Yes, clear. No hesitation. She studied me for a moment longer than necessary, then returned to the paperwork. Emergency guardianship petitions are built on urgency. The moment urgency dissolves, so does momentum. After several minutes, she spoke. Based on submitted documentation and recent medical evaluation, I do not find sufficient grounds for emergency guardianship. Silence. Daniel exhaled, not relief, impact. However, she continued, the pattern presented raises concern regarding premature assumption of control without legal authority. Her eyes remained on him. This court does not take lightly the use of emergency petitions as leverage. Leverage. There it was, formal, on record. Petition denied, she concluded, gavel short, contained, but then she added one final sentence. Should further filings be submitted without substantial new evidence, the court may consider review of petitioner intent. Not a threat. A warning, public, recorded. Daniel didn't look at me, his wife did. Something had shifted in her expression, less certainty, more calculation. Kellerman leaned toward Daniel and spoke quietly. Short, efficient. They left without speaking. Mark gathered his folder. That went as expected, he said. Is it finished? No, he didn't soften it. No, denied petitions don't always stop behavior, they redirect it. Redirect. Strategic. What do you expect? I asked. Pressure, social, financial, narrative. Narrative, reputation, community, church, neighbors, the driveway. We stepped outside. Daniel stood near the steps, waiting for me. Not his lawyer, not his wife, me. You made this public, he said quietly. You filed emergency guardianship. You forced it into a courtroom. I defended it. He looked tired, not angry, not victorious, cornered. You don't understand what this looks like, he said. From whose perspective? Our family. Family, that word again. Family doesn't remove autonomy without consent, I replied. You changed the trust? Yes, and didn't tell me? Correct, he swallowed. This didn't have to become this. No, I agreed. It didn't. Silence settled between us, thicker than before. "You've embarrassed me," he said finally. There it was. Not protection, not liability, embarrassment. "I didn't file," I said quietly. He held my gaze, then looked away. Across the street from the courthouse parking lot, a small group of people exited another building. Church members. Familiar faces, they hadn't seen us, yet Daniel saw them too. And for the first time, he looked uncertain. Not about the law, about perception. Emergency petitions are private until filed. Denied hearings still leave paper. Paper leaves record, record leaves narrative, and narrative spreads. He nodded once, tight, then walked away. Mark stood beside me. "He may pivot," he said quietly. "To what?" "Public concern." I understood. If he couldn't control legally, he might attempt to control socially. Perception, sympathy, rumor. I watched Daniel reach his car, pause, look back at the courthouse, then at me. This wasn't finished. It had only changed shape. And shape can be more dangerous than force. It started 3 days after the hearing, not with Daniel, with church. Mrs. Howard came by first. She brought lemon squares. She didn't sit. "I just wanted to check on you," she said gently. Her tone carried something underneath it. Soft concern, polished. "I'm fine," I replied. She hesitated. "Well, people are just worried." "People worried about what?" She lowered her voice slightly. "There was talk at Bible study. Daniel mentioned you've been under a lot of stress, that maybe things haven't been stable." Stable, new word, carefully chosen. I nodded once. "And what did you say?" She blinked. "I said families go through difficult seasons." Diplomatic. But not neutral. After she left, I stood at the window for a moment. Across the street, the curtain didn't move this time. No need. The shift had already begun. By Sunday, it was clearer. The pastor's greeting was warmer than usual. Longer handshake, longer eye contact. "I hear you've had some legal stress," he said quietly. I smiled. "Temporary," he nodded. "Well, we're praying for clarity." Clarity, another word, gentle, loaded. During fellowship hour, 2 women approached me together, sympathetic expressions. "We just want you to know," one said softly, "that it's brave to let your children help when it's time." When it's time, not if, when. The narrative was spreading, not that I was incapable, not yet, but that transition was inevitable. That resistance meant denial. It was subtle, strategic, and effective. Social pressure rarely shouts, it nods, it reassures. It frames surrender as wisdom. By Tuesday, I received a call from the bank. Routine verification. "Mrs. Hastings, we've received inquiries regarding potential oversight structure." Oversight structure. Daniel hadn't stopped. He'd redirected. "I have no authorized changes pending," I said calmly. "Yes, ma'am," the representative replied. "We're simply noting external interest." External interest. Polite phrasing for attempted influence. That evening, Daniel called, not aggressive, measured. "I didn't expect church to become involved," he said. "You mentioned it." I expressed concern, and concern spreads. He exhaled. "This isn't about embarrassment." "Then what is it about?" Silence. "Then you're isolating yourself." I attended service. "That's not what I mean." Of course it wasn't. "You're cutting me out." There it was again. Possession framed as concern. "You filed emergency guardianship. You amended the trust without telling me." "Correct." "And you think that doesn't look suspicious?" "To whom?" "To everyone." Everyone, not court, not judge, community. "Daniel," I said evenly, "do you know what makes people suspicious?" "What?" "Overreach." He didn't respond. "You tried emergency guardianship. It failed. Now you're trying social pressure." "I'm trying to prevent this from turning into something uglier." "It already has." Quiet. "Tight?" "You think I'm doing this for money?" he asked. "No, for control. I think you're afraid." His breathing shifted, subtle. "You don't understand what it's like to be responsible for everything." "I didn't ask you to be." "That's the point," he said sharply. "You don't ask, you decide." Now we were closer to the truth. "You mean I didn't consult you before amending the trust?" "Yes, you assumed future authority. I assumed responsibility. For assets you don't own." The line landed. He didn't raise his voice again. He just said, You're making this harder than it needs to be. Hard for whom? Silence. Then softer. I'm trying to protect what Dad built. There it was, not embarrassment, not liability, legacy, the house. The accounts, the perception of stewardship. You think protection means control, I said. I think someone has to lead. I'm still here. That silence was longer, more honest. By Wednesday, I noticed something else. The HOA newsletter. A new community meeting scheduled. Topic: neighborhood stability and long-term planning. Interesting timing. Daniel sat on the HOA advisory board. I didn't need confirmation. Pattern was enough. Mark called that afternoon. I'm seeing secondary pressure, he said. You expected it. Yes, what's next? They'll try reputational framing. If that doesn't work, financial friction. Explain. Delays, inquiries. Questions about capacity linked to institutions. Indirect pressure. Yes, and if that fails, then escalation. Escalation. What form? He paused. Temporary conservatorship filing. Or protective services inquiry. He said it calmly, like whether they won't win. They don't have to win, he replied. They just have to exhaust. Exhaust. That word settled deeper than the others. This wasn't about court anymore. It was about stamina. That night I drove past Daniel's house, not slowly, not suspiciously, just passing. His living room lights were on. Inside I saw movement, voices, animated, strategic discussion. They weren't finished. They were planning. The next morning, a letter arrived. Certified from an attorney, not Kellerman. Different name. Formal notice, review of estate structure under concern of undue influence. Undue influence. There it was, the shift. If they couldn't prove I lacked capacity, they would argue someone else was manipulating me. Specifically, Mark. The letter requested voluntary mediation, framed as resolution, but legally it was positioning. I folded the letter carefully, placed it beside the trust amendment copy. Across the street, a car idled again. Different vehicle, different driver, but same pause, observation. This had moved beyond emotion, beyond embarrassment, beyond church. It was strategy now. And strategy doesn't retreat quietly, it adapts, which meant Chapter 15 wouldn't be about defense, it would be about exposure. Mediation was scheduled for Friday. Voluntary, the letter had said. There is nothing voluntary about a legal notice delivered certified. Daniel chose the firm, neutral office, glass walls, conference table too long for comfort. Mark arrived first, set his folder down, said nothing unnecessary. Across the table sat Daniel, his wife, and a new attorney, younger, sharper, the kind who specializes in family asset realignment. That phrase had been in the letter, realignment, not control, not removal, realignment. Language always softens the blade. The attorney began smoothly. This is about clarity and stability. Your son simply wants to ensure long-term protection of family assets. Family assets? Interesting phrasing. Mark didn't interrupt. He let him speak. When it was my turn, I didn't argue. I didn't defend. I asked one question. What specific risk are you alleging? The attorney glanced at his notes. Potential undue influence in recent estate amendments. By whom? A third party. Mark didn't move, didn't blink. Based on what evidence? I asked. The attorney shifted. Timing of what? The amendment following family disagreement. That's not evidence, I said calmly. That's sequence. Daniel leaned forward. It's suspicious. To whom? I asked. To anyone looking at it objectively? Objectively, I nodded. Then let's be objective. I slid a folder across the table. Mark hadn't opened it yet. He didn't need to. Inside were copies of the failed emergency petition, the judge's warning about leverage, the bank inquiry timestamps, the lock change receipt purchased by Daniel, and one additional document, the HOA advisory email sent from Daniel's account. Subject line: preliminary discussion, transition plan if autonomy review succeeds, dated 3 days before the emergency filing. Silence fell, not heavy, precise. The younger attorney picked up the page, read it, then read it again. Daniel didn't reach for it, he already knew what it said. You were preparing community messaging, I said evenly. That's not what that is, he replied. It outlines asset transfer language. It outlines planning. For what? Silence. Mark spoke for the first time. Your client attempted emergency guardianship within 48 hours of an estate amendment he was not named primary beneficiary in. The younger attorney's jaw shifted slightly. Mark continued. Then social pressure began, then bank inquiry, now undue influence claim. The room was quiet enough to hear the air conditioning hum. Daniel's wife spoke quietly. We were trying to protect the house. There it was, finally, honest. From what? I asked. From being redirected outside the family? Outside, I met Daniel's eyes. So this was about inheritance. He didn't answer, but he didn't deny it. That was enough. Mark leaned back slightly. Courts look very closely at patterns when inheritance position changes trigger capacity claims. The younger attorney closed the folder slowly. This mediation may not be productive, he said carefully. On the contrary, I replied softly, it's clarifying. Daniel looked at me, really looked, for the first time since the lock change. You changed everything, he said quietly. No, I replied. I clarified everything. There's a difference. I didn't accuse him, I didn't shame him, I didn't raise my voice. I simply removed the soft words. Protection, concern, stability, what remained was control and inheritance. The younger attorney gathered his papers. I'll advise my client accordingly. Professional language for retreat. Daniel stayed seated. After his attorney left the room to take a call, he spoke again. You think I'm greedy? I think you were afraid. He didn't argue. You think I wanted you gone? You changed the locks while I was at the doctor. Silence, the longest one yet. I didn't think you'd fight it, he admitted. That was the most honest sentence he'd spoken. You didn't think I'd understand it, I corrected. His wife looked between us. The room felt smaller now, not tense, just stripped. Withdraw the undue influence review, Mark said calmly, and confirm in writing that no further guardianship filings will be initiated absent new medical evidence. Daniel nodded slowly. His shoulders lowered, just slightly, not defeated, but recalibrated. I don't want this to get uglier, he said. It already did, I replied quietly. He swallowed. I thought I was doing the responsible thing. For whom? He didn't answer, because that was the real question, for himself, for legacy. For image, for control. When mediation ended, we stepped outside into clear afternoon light. No engine running, no car across the street, no curtain shifting, just open sky. Mark walked beside me. You handled that well? It wasn't a fight. No, he agreed. It was exposure. Exactly. By the following Monday, formal withdrawal documents were filed. The undue influence inquiry was closed. No new petitions. No bank interference. No HOA positioning. The narrative shifted again. Quietly, at church, the tone changed. Less concern, more distance. Mrs. Howard didn't bring lemon squares this time. She simply waved. Distance is different from doubt. Distance means the story lost traction. Daniel still visits, not often, not strategically, just occasionally. We sit at the kitchen table. Neutral ground. He doesn't mention the trust. I don't mention the hearing. Some things don't need repetition. The locks remain unchanged. But something else did, not the house, not the assets, not the documents. The assumption, love does not grant authority. Concern does not equal consent. Protection without permission is possession. And possession, when challenged, reveals motive. If you stayed with me through this story, it's probably because something in it felt familiar. Maybe you've seen control disguised as care. Maybe you felt pressure framed as protection. If this story resonated with you, share it. Someone else may need to hear it before their locks are changed. And if you value stories about autonomy, strategy, and quiet strength, subscribe to Voice of Granny June. Because sometimes the most dangerous battles aren't loud, they're polite, and they happen at your own front door.